I'm Emma, and this is the story of how my stepsister Sarah's greed nearly tore our family apart, or so she thought. When my father remarried, I was 12. Sarah, his new stepdaughter, was 14. I still grieved the loss of my mother, who had died of cancer 2 years earlier, but I tried to welcome Linda and Sarah into our home. My father seemed happy again, and I wanted that happiness to last. Sarah, however, never saw me as a sister, only as competition. In front of our parents, she was sweet and polite, but behind closed doors, her mask slipped. "This is my house now," she'd whisper when no one else was around. "And your dad? He'll love me more than you." I tried to tell my father, but Linda always defended her daughter. "Girls will be girls," she'd say, brushing it off. "Sarah just needs time." Not wanting to upset his new marriage, my father encouraged me to keep trying, so I did. I poured myself into school, earned a business degree, and landed a job at a top financial consulting firm, something that made my father proud. Sarah, meanwhile, drifted from one failed job to another, constantly asking for money to fund some new crisis or half-baked venture. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. My father's health began to decline. What started as fatigue turned into something far worse, a rare form of leukemia. I immediately arranged to work remotely and took on the role of caregiver. That's when Sarah's sudden interest in our father began. She started showing up more often at the hospital, always requesting time alone with him, always insisting they had private things to discuss. Linda encouraged it, claiming Sarah was finally bonding with her stepfather. I didn't know it yet, but Sarah was laying the groundwork for my downfall. One night, after a grueling day at the hospital, I came home to find my laptop missing. I searched everywhere. When I asked Sarah, she simply shrugged. "I haven't seen it," she said. 2 days later, I got a call from my father asking me to come to his hospital room. When I arrived, his face was pale and drawn. Linda stood stiffly by his side, arms crossed, while Sarah sat close, holding his hand and crying. "Emma," my father said, voice low and filled with disappointment, "Sarah showed me everything. How could you steal from me?" "Steal? What are you talking about?" I asked, stunned. Sarah pulled out my missing laptop and opened it to reveal supposed bank statements, large transfers from my father's accounts to an offshore account in my name. I stared at the screen, heart racing. The documents were fake, but they looked terrifyingly real. "I was just trying to check my email on her laptop," Sarah said softly, her voice shaking with crocodile tears. "That's when I found these. I couldn't believe it. I had to tell you, Dad." "That's a lie," I cried. "She stole my laptop, she faked those documents." Linda stepped forward, eyes blazing. "How dare you accuse her, after everything she's done to protect your father?" "Dad, please," I begged. "You know I'd never do this. Sarah is manipulating you." But his eyes, once so full of trust, had gone cold. The years of subtle manipulation had taken their toll. He believed her. "I've already called my lawyer," he said. "I'm changing my will. I can't leave my estate in your hands, not after this." The world collapsed around me. Everything I'd worked for, every sacrifice I'd made, it was all being taken away by a lie. I tried to explain, but every word I said only made me look more guilty. "Get out," Linda snapped. "You're no longer welcome in this family." I turned to my father one last time, silently pleading for him to believe me, but he looked away. That silence shattered something inside me. As I stepped into the hallway, Sarah followed. Once the door closed behind us, the act dropped. Her tears disappeared, replaced by a satisfied smirk. "You should have seen your face," she whispered. "Did you really think he'd pick you over me? I planned every detail, the forged docs, the timing, flawless. And now, everything that should have been yours, is mine." I stood there, shaking, my whole body alive with rage and disbelief. "Why?" I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. "I never did anything to you." Sarah's eyes turned cold. "Because you existed. Because you were always the perfect daughter while I was just the afterthought. But not anymore. I win, little sister, I win." I left the hospital with nothing but my purse and car keys. An icy text from Linda awaited me: "Return to the house and I'll call the police." So I checked into a hotel, trying to make sense of how fast my life had unraveled. That night, my father's lawyer called. His voice was clipped, professional, utterly detached as he delivered the blow. My father had signed a new will. Everything, our home, his business shares, his investments, over $8 million, had been left to Sarah. I was cut out completely. I lay awake for hours, staring at the hotel ceiling, mind racing through every moment, every quiet manipulation I'd overlooked. Sarah had been playing the long game, and I hadn't even known I was in one. But then, a memory surfaced. Always keep proof of your integrity, my father once told me. The truth always finds its way to the surface. And with it came something Sarah didn't know existed, the safety deposit box. My father had given me access years ago. Inside it was something I was now certain would expose the truth. Let Sarah believe she'd won. Let her bask in her illusion of victory. Because the sweetest revenge is the kind you never see coming. 3 months later. I had moved into a modest apartment and stayed off their radar. Word spread, though, about Sarah's renovations to the family home, about her lavish spending with Dad's money, erasing any trace of me or my mother. Let her play queen. But today, everything was about to change. I sat quietly in the office of Mr. Thompson, the bank manager who'd known my father for 2 decades. Through the glass, I watched Sarah and Linda sweep in, dressed head to toe in designer clothes. They were here to open the safety deposit box. They'd finally found the key. What they didn't know was that I'd already been there, an hour earlier. Mr. Thompson greeted them formally. Mrs. Walker, Miss Thompson, please follow me to the vault. I watched on the security feed as they were led into the viewing room and the correct box was placed in front of them. Sarah could barely contain her excitement as she inserted the key. Hidden money? Forgotten assets? Her smile vanished the moment she opened the box. Inside was only a USB drive and a sealed envelope addressed in our father's handwriting. To be opened only in the presence of Emma Collins. Linda grabbed the letter, face flushed. What the hell is this? Where's the rest? Sarah reached to rip the envelope open, but Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the room. I'm afraid I must stop you there. That letter clearly states it must be opened with Miss Collins present. Sarah's jaw tightened. This is absurd. I'm the sole heir. Everything here is mine now. That was my cue. I stepped through the door. Hello, Sarah, Linda, surprised to see me? Both women turned ghost white. Linda recovered first, venom in her voice. How dare you show your face here? This is a private matter. Actually, Mr. Thompson interrupted. Miss Collins still has legal access to this box. She's fully entitled to be here. I picked up the letter, fingers steady. Shall we find out what Dad wanted to say to all of us? Sarah lunged toward me, but Mr. Thompson stepped in immediately. Miss Thompson, I must remind you, you're on camera. Any aggression will be reported to the authorities. With deliberate care, I opened the envelope and began to read. My dearest Emma. If you're reading this, my worst fears have come true. I know what Sarah did. I overheard her on the phone weeks ago discussing forged bank statements. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but I had to know who my daughters truly were. So I played along. I let her believe I trusted her. The USB in this box contains home office security footage of Sarah breaking in late at night, accessing my computer, creating the false documents. You'll also find audio recordings of her conversations with the hacker she hired. Emma, my brave girl, I'm sorry I ever doubted you, even for a moment. By now, I will have signed the real will, left with Mr. Davidson, my attorney, the one Sarah thinks is valid. It's a fake, part of my plan to expose her. Everything, my home, my shares, my estate, is yours, as it always should have been. With love, Dad. I looked up. Sarah's face had gone completely still, the blood draining from her cheeks. Linda's hands clutched the table, white-knuckled. Did you really think Dad's office wasn't under surveillance? I said quietly. All those late-night visits, the phone calls, he saw and heard everything. You're lying, Linda spat. This is some elaborate scam. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. The video showed Sarah in our father's office, her face lit by the glow of his computer screen. Yes, I need the statements to look perfect. Emma has to lose everything. Sarah let out a strangled sound and lunged for the phone, but again, Mr. Thompson stepped in, cool and firm. Enough. This footage will be turned over to the authorities, and I believe the estate attorney will want a word with both of you. I've already sent copies of everything to the police, I said calmly. They're quite interested in wire fraud and inheritance fraud cases. You can't prove anything, Sarah hissed, though her voice trembled. Actually, Mr. Thompson interjected, the bank has already received verification from Mr. Davidson's office regarding the validity of the real will. All accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Linda's grip tightened on Sarah's arm. We need to leave, now. Oh, you'll be leaving, I said coolly, But not for long. The police would like a word with both of you. They're waiting in the lobby. As if on cue, two uniformed officers appeared at the door. The next few moments blurred, Sarah and Linda being read their rights, their frantic protests echoing through the marble halls of the bank. I remained in the viewing room, clutching my father's letter. A single tear slid down my cheek as I read his words again. He had known. He'd protected me, right to the end. Mr. Thompson gently rested a hand on my shoulder. Your father was a wise man, Miss Collins. He knew exactly how to bring the truth to light. I nodded, wiping my eyes. Yes, he did. And now, it's time to make things right. The weeks that followed their arrest were a whirlwind: courtrooms, statements, headlines. As the investigation unfolded, Sarah's web of lies unraveled. She hadn't just forged statements, she had been siphoning money from my father's accounts for months, building a secret financial empire for herself. I sat silently in the courtroom as her empire collapsed. The evidence was undeniable: surveillance footage, recorded phone calls, forged documents, and even the testimony of the hacker she hired, who cut a plea deal in exchange for cooperation. Linda didn't escape justice either. She had known everything, helped plan it, and masked it all with her perfect stepmother act. Under cross-examination, the cracks showed. The prosecution revealed her as a full participant in the scheme. During the trial, Sarah finally broke down on the stand. It wasn't fair, she screamed, mascara streaking down her face. She always had everything: Dad's love, his trust, his pride. I deserved that money. The judge remained unmoved. Miss Thompson, your actions demonstrate a deliberate and malicious effort to destroy your stepsister's life for personal gain. You are hereby sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. Linda received 5 years for aiding and abetting. As they were led away in handcuffs, Sarah turned back one final time. I hate you, she spat. I've always hated you. I said nothing. I simply watched them go, not with triumph, but with sadness for the family we could have been. With the trial behind me, I returned to the family home. The first few days were quiet, strange. Sarah and Linda had already started redecorating, trying to erase me and my mother, but hadn't gotten far before their arrest. The house still held pieces of our life, of my parents' love. One evening, I was organizing papers in my father's study when I found an old photo album. Tucked between the pages was a sealed envelope, addressed in his handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. My dearest Emma. If you're reading this, then everything has played out as I feared it might. Pretending to believe Sarah's lies in the hospital was the hardest thing I've ever done. Watching you walk away, thinking I'd abandoned you, it broke my heart, but I had to let her believe she'd won. It was the only way to expose her fully. The hardest part is knowing I won't live to see justice done. Emma, you were always my greatest joy. You have your mother's strength, her warmth. The woman you've become makes me prouder than you'll ever know. The way you faced all this, with grace, with patience, proved everything I believed about you was true. The money, the house, the business, they're yours. But remember, none of that truly matters. What matters is how you stood in the face of betrayal and let truth speak for itself. I know it will take time to heal. Betrayal leaves scars. But please, build the life you deserve. Create a family based not on obligation, but on love and trust. Your mother and I are always with you, watching over you. With all my love. Dad. Tears streamed freely down my cheeks, even as he faced death and deception. My father had thought only of protecting me and preparing me for the road ahead. In the months that followed, I began to rebuild. The family business thrived under my leadership. I created a scholarship fund in my father's name to support students who had lost parents to cancer. It felt right, turning our pain into something that could help others. I started therapy, too, processing the trauma, the betrayal, the grief. Slowly, I learned to trust again. I began building a new life, surrounded by people who saw me for who I truly was. Sarah and Linda wrote to me from prison. Their letters were filled with apologies, excuses, pleas for forgiveness. I never wrote back. Some betrayals run too deep, and not every relationship deserves to be salvaged. Instead, I focused on honoring my father's legacy, not just with the wealth he left, but through the life I chose to live, one rooted in integrity, love, and truth. 5 years later, I still live in the family home. The halls are filled not with pain, but with peace. I keep my parents' photo on my desk, beside a framed copy of that final letter. Sarah and Linda's greed cost them everything: their freedom, their dignity, their future, but in the end, It taught me something invaluable. True wealth isn't measured in what we own, but in the integrity with which we live. As I sit in my father's study, watching the sun dip below the horizon through his favorite window, I feel calm, content. My life is rich, not in dollars, but in love, purpose, and truth. Everything Sarah wanted to steal, she never understood was never hers to take.